Welcome to the first ever Strip Pal Naked Snapshot edition. So I normally do these quick analysis breakdowns on Twitter when I'm reading a comic, and I'll take a screenshot of some stuff and just tweet about why it's interesting, but I want to try that in a new format, so I'm going to do these quick little videos in between regular episodes of Strip Pal Naked. So if this is interesting, just let me know in the comments, and hopefully we'll do more and more of these. So I was reading Lock and Key recently because obviously the Netflix series has come out, and I am absolutely blasting through all these issues of it. But I came to an issue in issue 4, I believe it is, of this series. I've got it open on Comixology here, Crown of Shadows, which is one of the later arcs. And I just want to quickly establish something before I get to the issue I was going to talk about, which is you can see the regular panel layout in here, and splashes are used very occasionally in this series, only for these kind of like really, really big moments. Mostly we get pages like this, right? Which are tiered often. There's usually a kind of overlapping that you can see here as well. There's usually overlapping images and stuff like that. But typically, this is a comic that has a handful of panels every single page. What we get as we lead up to the end of this issue, which I think is issue 4, is a character that's about to use a key to make themselves giant. And by doing that, what we see is the team do this kind of big giant scale thing in the next issue, which is really, really, really interesting. Because what you've essentially established is that each page works on a flat surface, on this kind of like two-dimensional surface. And so scale only really operates in terms of volume and size. So when we get to the end of the issue, you'll see a little bit what I'm talking about when a character here, Ty, uses this key, this giant key here, as you can see down in the bottom right panel. And he makes himself, essentially makes himself giant as he comes out of the house as this really big dude. And then the page expands to fit the size of that character. And when we get to the next chapter, which I believe we can do like that, there we go. Everything that then occurs takes place in these giant splash pages. And Rodriguez draws kind of a load of detail. The angles are very much like on par with the level of the characters as well. But it completely changes the way that this comic is interacted with, and it completely changes the scale of the comic as well, because all of a sudden we're now going to these page after page after page of giant imagery that matches the giant size of the characters that are taking place in it. So it's like the comic book page expands and the panels are too small almost to fit these characters, and so the panels have to expand too. And you'll notice that it is technically still a panel rather than splash pages. They do have a panel border on each end, as we can zoom in and see. So it's technically using the same language that has been established in all these previous issues, which is everything works within the panel, but the panels then scale up to show these dramatic changes in size. And as things start to get smaller, you see that the comic itself starts to then condense down too. As we see, it goes down from a single splash page to 2 panels, to 3 panels, to 4 panels, and then slowly the comic book gets smaller until obviously we kind of see the big dramatic reveal at the end when Ty lifts his family up and lets them see the scale. But it's clever how the comic book is replicating the sort of sensation and the feeling and the size of the characters within the page. And again, that's something that's super comic booky, because it's rare that you'll find a movie, say, that completely changes the aspect ratio to such a dramatic extent. You might find smaller examples of that, but to such a dramatic extent is impossible, because the canvas size that you're working with is constantly changing when you see panels. Like, for example, the panel here at the top is working on a fraction of the overall composition that you've got available to you on the page. And this is splitting that into 4 quadrants basically. So you have this completely expandable space that you have to use, and Lock and Key just in this issue shows that as a really cool example of a way to kind of manage that and expand that based on the scale of your action. It reminds me a lot of the Immortal Hulk, which we did the panel by panel issue on, where there's a big double splash page when Hulk first reveals himself, and he's sort of so big that he can only exist within 2 pages. It's a very, very similar concept to that, which is just imagining that actually what you've got to work with is this entire page, and so what's the best way of explaining the size and scale of your imagery within that same space. Anyway, that's enough of that. So thanks for checking it out. If you found that interesting, let me know in the comments, and hopefully we'll do more and more of those. And I'll catch you next time for another new episode of Strip Pal Naked.